The visual is not important here. The music is not important here. The voice is not important here. What matters are the words. If you cannot listen to the words, you do not belong here. If you understand this, welcome to the Fate Club. In the silence that precedes any perception, truth appears as a horizon that never comes closer. It is not a goal to be reached, nor a light to illuminate darkness, but a subtle cut in perception that separates the need to seek from a need to be sought. The human mind, accustomed to grasping, identifying, and owning, finds in this contradiction an initial unease because what is called truth ceases to be an object requiring attention. A person moving through the process of stepping away from the linear need to control begins to notice that truth is more a framework of movement than a fixed point. In old paradigms, the fight for truth became a means of power, where fear and judgment determined the value of knowledge, but now, as the ego withdraws, this fight loses meaning. There is no victor, no defeated, only silence observing itself. Truth reveals itself as an endless process, where every grasp, every definition, every concept dissolves the moment it seems firmly established. Consciousness, learning to stop relying on boundaries, realizes that seeking truth is not a path to revelation, but a slow, subtle adaptation to a state that was never defined. This state is neither rare nor exceptional. It is the ordinary movement of a mind that no longer needs to decide what is true and what is not. Every thought attempting to capture truth encounters the resistance of experience itself. Thinking, accustomed to maintaining the polarity of truth and falsehood, now meets only emptiness in the new perception. This emptiness is not loss. It is an opening of space where energy ceases to bind to beginnings and endings, where what was once named no longer becomes a measure of value. In this emptiness, the first touch of silence emerges, demanding neither control nor comprehension. Truth becomes a rhythm, a pulse of reality that cannot be grasped with words. Every attempt to define it only moves it further, and this movement itself forms the basis of a new experience. Consciousness, no longer seeking, begins to observe the transition where truth was once considered absolute and now occupies only the space between the pulses of the mind. The human body, entwined with old patterns of seeking, feels uneasy as the energy tied to beliefs slowly dissolves. Every reaction that once required judgment now encounters neutrality. This neutrality is not empty, it is full of movement, full of laws that reveal themselves only to those who have ceased to seek confirmation. In the old times, the fight for truth was linked to unification, to collective expectations, where the individual found security in external definitions. Now, as one learns to step away from identification with roles and opinions, truth becomes the passage between inner silence and outer experience, never demanding grasping. It is not loss, nor liberation, but a subtle reorganization of perception where the ego loses its monopoly on meaning. In these moments, when the mind stops responding to internal imperatives, a new kind of attention appears, a focus that requires no definitions, names, or categories. Every notion of truth is now just noise in the fields of perception, dissolving into silence. This kind of awareness does not judge, categorize, or encourage. It simply observes the flow that never stops and never closes. Every conversation about truth, every argument, every reasoning that once shaped identities now reflects a process happening without conscious consent. Consciousness realizes that the need for approval and confirmation is only a relic of the old world, gradually disappearing. The ego, clinging to truth as an object of knowing, loses power because the very essence of knowledge dissolves into infinite possibilities, neither true nor false. Truth begins to manifest as a frequency that the mind cannot capture, only feel as a rhythm passing through body and mind. It is not a definition, nor an ideal. It is the movement between moments where thought ceases to be a tool and becomes part of the whole. Every moment that once demanded clarity now meets a natural hue that requires no name. This process, seemingly invisible, shows itself in the slowness of reactions, the subtle retreat from convictions, the quiet acceptance that nothing needs to be proven. Truth no longer becomes a tool of power, is not an argument, nor a reason. It becomes a space accessible only to those who have stopped fighting, who allow themselves to be observers of experience, without the need to grasp or define. Consciousness, learning to stop judging, discovers that truth was never an object, but a movement flowing through every moment. This movement is not linear, not determined, not prescribed. It is a subtle resonance between inner and outer, continuously renewing itself, impossible to confine in words, concepts, or definitions. Every piece of knowledge once considered complete now encounters its own impermanence. One realizes that seeking truth was never about reaching, but about gradually releasing the need to grasp. Every grasp only confirms its elusiveness. This elusiveness ceases to be frustration and becomes the framework of a new awareness. In the silence where there are no disputes, no convictions, no victories or defeats, a subtle realization emerges. Truth has always been part of a process, happening without a name. There is no goal, no reward, only continuous movement that does not seek definition, that does not require authorization, manifesting in every moment when a mind ceases to react and lets things simply be. This realization does not appear suddenly. It is not a flash, but a slow current transforming the need to grasp into the ability to observe. The ego, once holding truth as a weapon or shield, loses significance, and in this release emerges a new kind of silence, a new kind of perception that no longer needs definitions, borders, or struggle. Consciousness realizes that truth, once an object of pursuit, is now a space for observing its own transition. This space is not static, not fixed, not anything that could be owned or controlled. It is a rhythm flowing through mind and body, through moments that seem random, yet are part of a subtle movement that never stops. Every moment that once demanded consent, affirmation, or definition now meets a gentle expansion of perception, where it is no longer necessary to grasp truth. It is not loss, it is not chaos, it is a natural recalibration of perception where old needs cease to exist and new ones do not appear. In these moments, a subtle silence emerges, requiring no interpretation, no meaning, simply being. Truth reveals itself as an endless flow, where every definition is only a moment in movement, where every argument reflects a process happening regardless of individual awareness. This process is not a competition, not a goal, not a reward. It is a transition occurring through people, through their experiences, without need for approval, definition, or possession of what was never possible to own. Whoever stops fighting can notice the subtle shades, the rhythm, the pulse of reality passing through silence, mind and body, requiring no consent. Looking back, it is clear that the fight for truth has ceased to exist, not because it was defeated, but because truth was never an object, only a movement, a process that cannot be grasped. This movement passes through every moment, and those who observe it stop binding themselves to outcomes, stop binding themselves to definitions, stop binding themselves to the need to seek and grasp. If we recognize that truth is the eternal lie, not because it deceived us, but because its essence was never graspable, the need to fight for it disappears. The ego, once wielding truth as a weapon or shield, loses power, and in this release emerges a new kind of silence, a new way of perceiving that no longer requires definitions, no longer requires boundaries, no longer requires struggle. If you understand this, welcome to the club.